good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Opportunity Makers. I'm super excited this morning about my guest, but before we introduce Mr. Doug Dane, I just want to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. I live in beautiful Muskoka, Ontario, about 2 hours north of Toronto, and it is the land of the Chippewas of Rama, the Wada Mohawk First Nation, and the Moon River Métis and Inuit. And taking this moment is really about acknowledging our Indigenous culture and the recognizing that our Indigenous friends have been the caretakers and continue to be the caretakers of this beautiful land. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do that. This morning, I am welcoming my friend Doug Dane. Doug and I had the opportunity to work closely together when we were both involved with Bob Proctor and his work. And Doug has written a fantastic book that has hit the shelves only 2 weeks ago on April 4th and is already selling like hotcakes for good reason. It is a fantastic read, but more importantly, it is a very useful guide to breaking free of a past that is not serving you and stepping into a future that does. So, Doug, welcome.
Morning, Libby.
How
Nice
are
to be
you?
here.
It's great to have you here. I'm really honored because you are hitting the big time with, television appearances on CBS and all kinds of other things coming up for you. So I really want to thank you for spending time with me and with everyone on LinkedIn this morning.
No, I appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and I love this this format of this broadcast that you do. It's cool. It's really
Oh,
good.
thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Doug, Mistaken Identity, it did only launch on April 4th, and it really is selling extremely well for, I think, very good reason. You have a very compelling story to tell that is very personal.
Mhm.
And do you want to share just a little bit of the impetus behind the book and why it was so important for you to write this book and write it now?
Yeah, sure. There's a story in the book that came out in 2001, and the reason the story is in the book is because it's a really good story. Is to hook your attention so I can attempt to change your mind about some things that may be causing you some challenge in your life. So for me, I had a very difficult childhood, and it didn't really show up for me until 2001. I wrote an article in the Toronto Star here in Canada. And it was on the front page of the lifestyle section of the Saturday paper, and it was called "Dark Past, Bright Future." And I wrote that article because for about 9 months prior, I was going through a lot of counseling. My second marriage had failed, and for most of my life, relationships were really difficult for me. I really struggled with them. I struggled in them. I didn't really feel good about myself, and I was doing well in business. I couldn't figure out what the hell am I doing wrong in this. I mean, I'm a fairly intelligent guy. I was doing some pretty stupid things. And anyway, I was in counseling, separation counseling, as the marriage was ending, and she started asking me these, the typical family history questions that therapists or counselors ask, and I couldn't really answer many of them. And she said, "I think there's some abuse in your background." I said, "There's no abuse in my background." She said, "Well, Doug, you're struggling in certain areas of your life, specifically relationships. You don't really have any recollection or a lot of memories. And if you want your life to get better, you might want to take a look at your past." And so literally I went on an investigation. And so I got adoption records because I was adopted as a 6-month-old baby. I found my birth mom. I found birth siblings. I got all these records from Children's Aid Society, it was called at the time, social services, who had been in and out of the house, police records, social service records. Met social workers that were still around at that time, parents, teachers, neighbors, family, friends. And I put this story together that had been blocked out up until that point, 39 years old. And it was a very, I got dropped in a very violent, alcoholic, abusive home. My parents were emotionally and physically abusive towards each other and towards myself, my brother. A lot of violence. So had all these adverse childhood experiences, emotional, physical abuse, witnessing violence, neglect, mistreatment. And then that went for 13 years. And then my mom left home and never came back. And I went looking for love in all the wrong places, I'd say. And, I was just, my dad was, he was a broken man. And I ended up getting hooked in with this ring of pedophiles. And so then I was sexually abused over a 2-year period. It was 4 men and 23 boys, at least that they had found. And that ended with my kidnapping at 15. One of the men took me from my home and to try to escape police arrest in Kitchener, Ontario, where I was living at the time. And then after that, I returned home and the police arrived at my door, the next phase of my life was 15 through 23, which was drugs and alcohol. Working in a factory, decided one day I wanted to quit that job. Didn't want to be my parents, so I wanted to get into business. So I got into business, failed miserably, went bankrupt, landed back on my feet, and then I started to figure out success. So that's all leading up to sort of 25, and then 25 through 39. I did well. I did well in life. I did well financially. I was successful in business. I was in the financial services industry. I was at the top of my game. I was known all over the country. I was one of the top people in the country in that industry. And then the story comes out. And I wrote the story because I realized that when you tell your story, if you've gone through what I went through, it doesn't normalize what happened to you, but it normalizes you. And so it normalized me. And I felt better almost instantly with it being published. I remember getting the newspaper that Saturday morning. And then a bunch of people started phoning me and emailing me. And a lot of people going, Doug, how did you do that? Like, how did you go from that to being successful and then going public and then freeing yourself from all the negative emotions that come from the trauma of that kind of a past? And Libby, if you'd asked me, in 2001 or really even up until 2000 and probably a couple of years ago, I had a hard time explaining to you. I could tell you what I did, but I couldn't tell you how to do it for you. And so I was meeting all these people and not just people that had gone through what I went through, just regular people and regular families, but they were still struggling with how they felt about themselves. They didn't feel good enough or worthy, or they thought there was something wrong with them. They were suffering with, emotional, mental health problems, all this stuff. And then of course, tragic stories. Right. And my heart was I just wanted to figure this out so I could help other people, because I was in the business of helping people and mentoring people. And so I just went on a mission and I pursued the answer, because for me, I still was carrying around some things that I thought I'd let go of, but they kept coming back up.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus for it. And then when I finally figured it out and realized how long I made it, it took way too long. I made it way too hard, and I thought it was complicated. It was actually quite simple. It's very easy, and it can happen really fast. And so I wanted to assemble it into a book. And so I wrote the book. So the book is partially the story, but this is more of I call it a guide to letting go of a past that's holding you back. So it's more of a handbook. And so each chapter is only a couple pages long, 2 or 3 pages long. It's about 5 minutes per chapter. But then there's an exercise, and I get you to take an action step or answer some questions. And because I can't get in front of everybody. I don't know how many people are watching right now, but I can't get to everybody. So this messenger, the message in the book, this is a messenger. This can get to people a lot faster. And it's well laid out. It's a very good book. And I say that only because of the feedback for people that are going through the book in 30 days and the things that they're reporting. It's quite remarkable.
Well, and it is, it is, I'm going to say it's a hard read because your story is so real and so raw. And yet, I sit here, I'm reading the book myself, and I'm thinking, well, why am I stuck?
Right.
I have no reason to be stuck, and yet I am.
Right.
And so, each chapter, it's not that the book is dwelling on your past, but it is information and it is insight. And the fact that you've got these exercises at the end of each chapter, it is so freeing. Right? And one simple question, whether you write it down or just really think about it. There's a chapter, and this is not one of the chapters that I had identified in advance of our call, but it's easier to be yourself. And simple question, make a list of all the people you compare yourself to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and why?
Right.
Why are you comparing yourself? I mean, it's fine to sort of look at people and admire them and say, that's awesome. If they can do it, I can do it. But too often we compare ourselves negatively.
That's right. Yeah. Well, even like you just said about you reading the book. So one of the challenges I pose to people go, if the story doesn't bother me, why does it bother you? Well, that's a clue, And I said right in the book, you obviously missed it, Libby. I said, don't compare my story to yours when you're going through the book.
Well, I did. Okay.
But that's what it is. And listen, we got to understand, we were taught to do that. We were taught to compare ourselves to others. We were taught to judge ourselves.
Yeah.
We weren't judgmental when we were little. We were taught to be judgmental. We got judged, and then we took on judging ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's the first chapter. Stop judging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because of our audience today, which is a professional audience, we've got entrepreneurs, sales professionals, sales leaders, folks in HR, etc. Let's talk about some of the advice and counsel that they can get from reading this book.
Yeah. You want me to go ahead, or you have a question?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So maybe not as much the entrepreneur, but the career professional, the person who is working for an organization. Mm-hmm. There is a system at play in organizations that say you progress like this. Whoops, my hands are going out of view, right? And so this book would say you don't have to live by those rules.
Right.
So what are some of the key points from the book that you would say are super relevant to the career professional who really wants a lot more, but doesn't think they're able to achieve more?
Well, first off, you're wrong that you're not able to. That's a mistake for sure. Listen, there's a couple parts in the book where I talk about these man-made rules. I don't mean gender man-made rules, but there's God-made rules and let's call them human-made rules.
Yeah.
And one of the chapters is called The Big Con. Mm-hmm. We've been conned, from a very early age into believing things, rules, values, beliefs. There's these structures or these paradigms or these hierarchies in family, in companies, and all that stuff. And they're all made up by other people, and we're all following the rules blindly. And the reality, the rules are always changing.
Yeah.
And they're being changed by people. And so you don't have to, you can follow the rules, but here's why we follow the rules when we don't need to. Listen, any one of you can quickly outgrow your current position, and you can jump up the ladder if you choose to. But here's why we don't, right? We want to move ahead. We want to do better. We want a better life. We want to earn more because you're worth more. You feel it. That's the pull. You're worth more. You can give more, serve more, do more, and of course you want to earn more. But two big issues. There's two big external pressures that we've grown up with. In my age category anyway, it's more severe than ever. And number one is a huge compulsion to conformity. Mm-hmm. We were taught to conform. And then the other one, of course, is a really strong fear of judgment or criticism. What are people going to think? What are they going to say? What are they going to think of me? And that is all learned behavior as well.
Yeah.
And everybody's worried about what other people are thinking about them. And actually, nobody's actually thinking about you at all. They're thinking about themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, that's one thing we definitely get into is that like with I mean, so I spent, for 30 years since '89, I've been an entrepreneur, a salesperson, a CEO, a leader, a mentor, all that stuff. And so I get, if you're watching, I understand you. And we are just, this mistaken identity skews our view
Mhm.
on what we're able to do. Like I had a skewed view on writing a book. I was saying to Livy earlier that by actually writing this book and formulating what this formula, this system, this duplicable formula, I had to lay it out in an organized manner. I could lead you along by me doing that and actually doing what's actually in the book. In other words, doing the exercises that are in the book. This is what I did. Okay.
Yeah.
To free myself from all this. And by doing that, that freed me to publish a book.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't want to publish a book. Are you kidding? I don't want to write a book. Everybody's going, you should write a book. I don't want to write a book. I wrote an article. I was on TV. That's good enough. But that's what happens. So you clear up the mistaken identity. You see yourself differently.
Mm-hmm.
You see your potential, your capability. You see opportunity. We're blinded. Opportunity is right there. Like, I love this. Opportunity makers, opportunity street. I mean, it's right there, but you don't see it or you don't feel comfortable going down that road.
No, and I'm going to ask you a question. So something funny happens as well. So now you've written a book.
Mm-hmm.
Before you wrote a book, did you think writing a book was going to be hard?
I didn't think writing was going to be hard because I do a lot of writing and I've done a lot of speaking in my career and stuff. But it was hard to accept the idea that I had a good book in me. That was hard for sure.
Yeah.
But when it came to writing the book, and somebody asked me like, how long did it take you to write the book? I said, well, I've been writing it for 8 years in my mind because 8 years ago in my journal, I found it. I wrote the words mistaken identity. I think everybody has a mistaken identity. I think they're stuck in a prison of their own making. They've been arrested because it's a mistaken identity. The real villain is their upbringing and their conditioning. And the key to their freedom lies inside, and they can break out. They're free to go. And so that was and then I was coaching and mentoring people trying to solve this and figure this out. But I actually wrote the book. It didn't take long at all. It was quite fast. So I'd already organized in my mind,
Yeah. It's and Curry's just written here, seeing yourself differently is an important message. I was flashback to one of my own memories. So as you know, I trekked across the Arctic Circle, 58 years old, something only 50 people do in any given year. And here I am trekking the Arctic Circle, snowshoeing 100 kilometers, 2 weeks, sleeping outside. I don't like the cold and I don't really camp. So that's a big deal.
Right.
So we get to the hotel, motel, whatever we want to call that. We shower, we're sitting around just chatting. And I had this very strange, duplistic thought. On the one hand, holy crap, I just trekked the Arctic Circle. Well, if I could do it, I guess it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Ah.
And I stopped myself. I said, no, you're not going to go there. This was a big deal, and you're going to recognize that this was a big deal. Yeah. And that's part of the con too, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, no, but again, it's a learned thing. We're not great at receiving compliments, or even we do achieve something, a milestone like that. We tend to minimize ourselves because we got minimized when we were little. I mean, our parents just didn't do a real great job. They weren't armed with a whole lot of information, and even today, actually, there's more information for parents to do better. But they're actually doing worse because they were kids struggled from our parents, and now they're raising kids that are struggling. But we gotta stop. That's one of the chapters. I know you like stop it. We gotta stop comparing ourselves in a critical way. There's a big difference between feedback and criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback is what could I do differently as I go forward, and you course correct. Criticism, analyzing and talking about and ruminating what you've already done, you can't undo.
Yeah.
that doesn't do anything other than just get you stressed and anxious and depressed.
Yeah.
That's a mistake. Our mind, part of the book is understanding what I didn't understand, mindset. Our mind actually directs our brain and nervous system in terms of what we think and how we feel in our actions. And then we got all this conditioning and programming, all these rules that we follow that don't make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that my mind is a machine, and it operates like all machines according to certain rules. So I figured I better learn the rules, and what directs the machine, the program that guides the machine, is this image of myself, this opinion of myself, and obviously I was mistaken about my own identity, because what I was told and what I witnessed and what I endured, it formed an opinion of myself that was off track. And that's why I felt so off track. It wasn't what I went through, Libby. Right? It's how I felt about myself because of what I went through. That's what caused all the dis-ease in me.
Yes. And you just said something interesting, the dis-ease in you, the disease, the dis-ease. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the discomfort. One of the chapters that I think is brilliant. It's so simple, but it's asking yourself the question, is that really true?
Right.
Right. We hold so much crap as if it's the truth about us, about our capabilities, about our potential, about what we are allowed to do.
Yeah.
Go back to the person working in an organization, what we're allowed to do versus the rules that we might want to break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that really true?
Yeah. And we are conditioned to react to external stimuli or external situations. And what happens, it triggers something. Again, this is all learned and habit. It's nothing wrong with you, but we react, and then our imagination, the nervous system triggers something, and our imagination starts to create something, and we start worrying about it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we get ourselves all wound up, and we have to understand that our mind is this goal-seeking machine. So if you start giving attention to something you're worrying about, you're going to get anxious and nervous and scared. We're always, I was talking to my brother yesterday. He was here talking about his daughter, and he said, we're creating our own anxiety. Anxiety simply, I didn't know this, anxiety is simply worrying about the future. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Worrying about the meeting you're going into, worrying about what the prospect's going to say, worrying what your boss is going to say. If you're an introvert going to a party, worrying about what, you get the drill, right? And we're spending way too much time in the future predicting all these things, and it causes nervousness and anxiety. That's what I was doing. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was doing that.
I know. It's amazing that you wake up in a cold sweat because you've had a dream about something that isn't true. You think about that meeting, and you can get yourself so completely off track that of course the meeting is not going to go well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So that question, is that really true? We do have to be starting to pay attention, and because our imagination will make all this stuff up, and you go, is that really true?
Mm-hmm.
No, is that, and your imagination will keep on talking, right?
Yeah.
No, is that really true? And you have to ask yourself that question.
Yeah.
I had somebody kept asking me until he kind of drilled the habit in. Now I remember to use that on myself.
Yeah. And, sometimes to ask a question like that, well, yeah, it is really true. I mean, it's, my history, my background, what I was born into, blah, blah, blah. So try it out. I do this in programs when I'm working with a team of leaders or employees in a company. I make the statement, there isn't enough time in the day to get everything done that needs to get done. Is that true or false? And they all say it's true. So the exercise is simply come up with 6 different truths.
Right.
Because that particular line ain't true.
Right.
And that's going to keep you stuck and feeling anxious. Now, imagine you apply that same thinking to bigger areas of your life that are a lot more meaningful than just feeling like you don't have enough time in the day.
Yeah, totally. It could be simple as your parents saying, be aware of strangers.
Yeah.
Literally, they could have drilled that into you, and now you're uncomfortable around people you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We just have all these things drilled into us that aren't true. We're mistaken. They were mistaken in what they were telling us.
Yeah.
We accepted, so we made a mistake. And then we use our feeling towards ourselves as evaluating, predicting our future and what we're capable of.
Yeah. So let's jump to one of the great pieces of advice. Stop it.
Right.
Is it really more complicated than that?
It's not. I wish it was. Only because I dragged my victim mentality around for way too long, And when you're a victim, it's actually very convenient to explain away why you're stuck or why you ruminate or all this stuff. And no, it really is just that simple. We have absolute control and we have the ability to direct our mind, which directs our brain and nervous system, like I said. We make up a lot of stuff. We think about a lot of stuff. We dwell on a lot of stuff. We dwell in the past. We dwell in the future. And we have to stop it, because if you're thinking about the past with guilt or resentment, or you're worrying about the future, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be irritable. You're going to have depression. I mean, you're going to suffer. If you're suffering, it's because you're not thinking properly. Stop it.
And really, suffering, we've only got 3 minutes left. People might be listening to this saying, I'm not a victim. I don't really have any suffering. Just check yourself on all the little things that you might say to yourself. Like, and if my husband is listening, well, that's just the nature of the business.
Right.
It takes that long. That's just how this business works. That's just how this organization works. They're all lies that were just somebody else has said it and we've bought into it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's a good word to use. We should start acting naturally. It's not in our nature to be stressed and anxious. Okay. It's not the nature of the business. It's the nature of what we were taught to perceive ourselves about your business, if that's what you're in. We arrived here, we were quite comfortable and relaxed. We were filled with love and integrity. And we just got programmed into a bunch of things, and we don't act naturally. So if you're not, listen, here's my challenge. If you don't feel calm and relaxed and comfortable and joyful most of the time, something's off track. You think there's something. I always say this: rather than ask yourself what's wrong with me, what you should be asking is what's wrong with what I believe, or what's wrong with what I'm following. That's what's wrong. But we have this feeling, we feel like we're off track, or we're not performing, or whatever runs through your head, your thoughts and your feelings, whatever's run through your mind. Those things are running through your mind because you're just locked into things that are wrong, that you just bought into. That's what's wrong. And stop trying to fix yourself too. Just be yourself. That's the ticket.
Yeah. Because who you are is magnificent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Doug, who you are is truly magnificent. We've run out of time.
Goes fast, huh?
So for anybody who wants to get in touch with Doug, it's doug@dougdane.com. The book is available, Mistaken Identity. Just hold it up here one more time. It is available at all of your bestseller online places where you buy your books. It is soon, if not already, in some of the great bookstores like Indigo in Canada, and Barnes and Noble in the US, etc. But wherever you are, this is a fantastic book. It really is, Doug. And I am so thrilled that you allowed it to be put onto paper the way you have. I'm going to be reading it again. It's one of those books that is absolutely worth studying and not just reading. But the first time I read through it all in one shot. And now I'm going back and I'm just flipping open. Right? There's a lesson for me every single day in one of the chapters that's about 5 minutes worth of my time that's going to free me up.
Yeah, good.
So thank you, Doug. Thank you for being here. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. There is no session next week, but two great speakers coming up in May. So do watch for that. And we will see you all again on the next episode of Opportunity Makers.
Thanks, Libby.
Hey, bye for now. Whoops, we're not out yet. I'm going to say bye for now again.